Welcome back to Timeless Wisdom, the show where we unearth these amazing gems of knowledge from the Quran and connect them to our lives today,
Yeah.
Today we're diving into a powerful verse from Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 19.
Okay.
It uses this metaphor of rain to teach us a profound lesson about navigating life's challenges, especially when things get really tough.
Yeah, it's really intriguing, how this verse just paints such a vivid picture of a storm, using all these words like darkness, thunder, and lightning. It really sets the scene for this whole deeper message about how people react to these elements.
Yeah. And he goes on to describe people becoming so afraid during the storm that they cover their ears.
Yeah.
I think we've all felt that way sometimes, haven't you? A feeling of being completely overwhelmed, even by things we know are ultimately good for us.
Absolutely. It's that instinctive reaction we have to just seek shelter, to protect ourselves from what we perceive as a threat. But what's fascinating here is that the verse doesn't condemn that initial fear. Instead, it contrasts those who remain fixated on that immediate discomfort with those who have faith in the bigger picture.
It seems to be saying that those who focus only on the thunder and lightning miss the blessing of the rain. They're so busy just trying to avoid the temporary discomfort that they miss the long-term benefit.
That's a great point. And this is where I think understanding hypocrisy, which is mentioned in the verse, becomes really crucial. They're described as those who call upon God only when they're in distress, but then they disregard him when things are calm and going well. And this short-sightedness is what prevents them from seeing the divine plan at play, even amidst hardship.
So it's not just about having faith during difficult times, but recognizing God's presence and wisdom in every situation, good or bad.
Precisely. Now let's connect this to a deeper layer of meaning in this verse. Rain, in Islamic thought, is often used as a metaphor for mercy, knowledge, and divine blessings. The verse doesn't just describe this physical phenomenon, but it actually points to a spiritual reality. God sends down his mercy and guidance even in the midst of what we perceive as a storm.
Okay, so there's this idea that even when things feel really chaotic and uncertain, there's a deeper purpose, a divine wisdom that we might not immediately grasp.
Exactly. The verse challenges us to look beyond that surface level, to trust that even the thunder and lightning have a role to play in our growth and ultimately lead to the rain of God's blessings. This reminds me of a story about a man who lost his job unexpectedly. Initially, he was just devastated, feeling like his world was falling apart. But he chose to see it as an opportunity to really reassess his priorities and pursue a career path that was more aligned with his passions.
That's a great example of how a perceived setback can actually lead to something so much better if we have the faith and the courage to embrace the change.
It's about shifting our perspective, recognizing that we might not always understand the reasons behind what happened, but trusting that God has a plan for us that's ultimately for our good. And this is where modern psychology actually offers some really interesting parallels. The concept of cognitive reframing, for example, is about consciously choosing to reframe our thoughts and beliefs about a situation to find a more positive and empowering interpretation.
So just like the man in your story, instead of getting stuck on those negative emotions, we can train our minds to see the potential for growth and opportunity in every challenge.
Yes. And this is a skill that takes practice, just like any other. The Quran encourages us to constantly remind ourselves of God's attributes, his mercy, his wisdom, and his power. And by strengthening that connection with the divine, we can cultivate a mindset of faith and trust that allows us to navigate life's ups and downs with more resilience and grace.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about remembering that even though we might not be in control of external circumstances, we can choose how we respond to them internally. We can choose to react with fear and despair, or we can choose to respond with faith and hope.
Exactly. And that choice is ultimately what determines the course of our lives. Now let's delve into another layer of meaning in this verse.
Before we do, I want to remind our listeners that we have a ton of resources available on our YouTube channel, The Broke Entrepreneur, to help you delve deeper into the Quran and discover practical ways to apply its teachings to your life.
Absolutely. We've got videos, articles, podcasts, all sorts of content to support you on your journey of personal growth and spiritual development. Now, as I was saying, this verse also touches upon this tension, between instant gratification and long-term vision. The hypocrites, fixated on their immediate discomfort, they seek to silence the thunder, which is like a metaphor for their desire to quell any challenge to their worldly desires. And they just fail to see that long-term benefit, that nourishing rain, which represents spiritual growth and closeness to God.
So it's like they're choosing the fleeting comfort of covering their ears over the lasting benefit of enduring the storm, knowing it will eventually bring that life-giving rain.
Exactly. And this is a struggle we all face, isn't it? We live in a world that constantly bombards us with these messages of instant gratification, urging us to seek immediate pleasure and avoid discomfort at all costs. But this verse reminds us that true fulfillment lies in aligning ourselves with God's plan, even if it requires patience and perseverance.
This makes me think about the Islamic concept of sabr, often translated as patience or steadfastness. It emphasizes enduring hardships with grace, knowing that challenges are not meant to break us, but to build us. It reminds me of the prophet Ayub, peace be upon him, who endured immense suffering with unwavering faith in God, ultimately emerging stronger and closer to the divine.
That's a powerful example. The story of Prophet Ayub, peace be upon him, teaches us that true strength lies not in the absence of suffering, but in our ability to navigate it with faith and trust in God's wisdom. It's a reminder that challenges are not meant to punish us, but to refine us, to draw us closer to our Creator.
It's like those intense workout sessions at the gym. Yeah, they're tough in the moment. But the long-term benefit of increased strength and fitness is undeniable.
That's a great analogy. The Quran uses this metaphor of rain, not just to describe this natural phenomenon, but to illustrate a profound spiritual truth. Just as the earth needs rain to thrive and grow, our souls need challenges and trials to purify and elevate us.
So how do we practically apply this concept of sabr in our daily lives? How can we move beyond the allure of instant gratification and cultivate the patience needed to endure hardships and stay focused on the bigger picture?
One powerful tool is the practice of gratitude. When we focus on what we have rather than what we lack, it shifts our perspective from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance. Taking a few moments each day to consciously appreciate the blessings in our lives can have a profound impact on our mindset and emotional well-being.
That makes sense. It's like training our minds to see the rain even when we're in the midst of the storm. It reminds me of the Hadith, where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "He who wakes up safely in his home, healthy in his body, and with his provision for the day, it is as if the world has been bestowed upon him."
That's a beautiful reminder. It encourages us to appreciate the simple yet profound blessings that we often take for granted. Another practical step is to set realistic goals and break them down into smaller, achievable steps. This helps us to stay focused on the process and avoid feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task at hand.
So instead of fixating on the end goal, which might seem far off or unattainable, we can focus on taking small, consistent actions that will eventually lead us to our destination.
Exactly. The Quran reminds us that, verily, with hardship comes ease, urging us to persevere through difficulties, knowing that relief will inevitably follow. This aligns with the concept of delayed gratification in psychology, which emphasizes the importance of prioritizing long-term rewards over immediate pleasures.
This is starting to paint a clear picture for me. It's about shifting our mindset from one that seeks to avoid discomfort at all costs to one that embraces challenges as opportunities for growth and sees patience as a key ingredient for success.
And that shift in mindset is a journey, not a destination. It requires conscious effort, consistent practice, and reliance on God's guidance. Another key aspect of this verse is the reminder that God's knowledge and power encompass everything. Now, going back to the verse, the statement that God surrounds us from all sides isn't meant to evoke fear, but rather to instill a sense of comfort and security, right? It's like knowing that even when things are tough, we're not alone. We have higher power watching over us, guiding us and supporting us every step of the way.
Exactly. It's this reminder, that even in the darkest of storms, we are enveloped in God's mercy and care. He sees our struggles, hears our prayers, and is always with us, even when we might not feel His presence.
That's such a comforting thought. It's like knowing that even when we feel lost and alone, we're actually being guided and protected.
And that awareness can be so incredibly liberating. It allows us to let go of that illusion of control, to surrender to a power greater than ourselves, and to trust that, even if we don't understand the why behind our current circumstances, there's a divine wisdom unfolding that we might not be privy to yet.
So it's about recognizing that we're not meant to have all the answers, but rather to trust in God's plan, even when we can't see the whole picture.
Exactly. And that trust, that surrender, can really free us from a lot of anxiety and worry. It allows us to just focus on what we can control, our own actions, our thoughts, our intentions, and leave the rest to God. This reminds me of a story I once heard about this man who was traveling through the desert, and he got lost, and he was running out of water, and he was just desperate and afraid, but he kept praying for guidance. And eventually he came across this small stream, and his thirst was quenched. And later he learned that the stream was a seasonal one. It only appeared for a few days each year. And he just realized that had he arrived a day earlier or a day later, he would have missed it entirely. And it was profound realization of how God's timing is perfect, even when we don't understand it.
That's a beautiful story. And it just perfectly illustrates the point that we're discussing. Sometimes we're so focused on our own timeline, our own plans, that we miss the blessings that God has in store for us. But when we surrender to his will, we open ourselves up to these possibilities and miracles that we could never have imagined on our own.
This whole conversation has really shifted my perspective on how I view challenges and hardships. It's like, instead of seeing them as obstacles or punishments, I'm starting to see them as opportunities for growth, as signs of God's care and guidance in my life.
And that's such a powerful shift to make. When we can approach difficulties with that mindset, it changes everything. We become more resilient, more patient, and more trusting in the divine plan.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring it back to our listeners. What's one practical step they can take today to apply the wisdom of this verse to their own lives?
Well, I think a powerful practice is to consciously cultivate an awareness of God's presence throughout the day. We can do this through prayer, through remembrance of God, or simply by just taking a moment to pause and reflect on the blessings in our lives. And when we make this a regular practice, it helps us to stay grounded in faith, even when we're faced with storms.
And don't forget, we have a ton of resources available on our YouTube channel, The Broke Entrepreneur, to help you delve deeper into the Quran and discover practical ways to apply its teachings to your life.
Absolutely. We've got videos, articles, podcasts, all sorts of content to support you on your journey.
So until next time, remember, the Quran's wisdom is timeless. Apply it today.